Okay, Minister Ari, this next question is for you. So you can unmute yourself if you can hear me. But the question is, what does reparations work look like outside of a national election cycle? So take us beyond 2020, if you will, because a lot of this conversation right now is happening within a national election cycle. With people are talking to candidates who are making promises, but when it's not in the news, like what does the work at the grassroots level look like during those periods of time?
I think one of the key areas that the work should look like is that of slavery disclosure. The enforcement of slavery disclosure laws is one. In Philadelphia, we have a slavery disclosure law that requires, upon disclosure, financial institutions must submit a financial reparations plan. Pure and simple. It's been on the book since 2005. However, the enforcement aspect has been not dealt with, because even the politicians who sponsored the bill, they are still locked down by the financial institutions in the city. And so they don't go towards the enforcement. They got it on the books because of NCOBRA. That's what we did in 2005. But when we come to the enforcement piece, that's where we have to come at right now. Enforcement, getting the language right about who we are, and do not allow these politicians to determine what reparations will look like for us. The criminals can't do that. So those are three things that must go on currently and post the election, or during this election campaign cycle. So we have to do that on the ground. We can't do that and be effective online. You must do it on the ground. You must organize your local chapters. You must organize people who understand what laws have been passed, what laws on the books. Let me tell you something to see how to approach that slavery disclosure law. It's a law that's been passed by elected officials, the Philadelphia City Council. So they have a duty to enforce it. And what approach that we can use to force them to enforce the slavery disclosure laws is what they call a writ of mandamus, right? That is to say, we're not asking them to do anything other than what the law requires. And usually when we have exhausted all of our remedies and have shown the clear duty that we've exhausted all other remedies, and that they show the clear duty that the city council has, then we can make that change. We can win a case in court, right? And so that's what we have to engage. We cannot do anything just by talking, because after we talk, everything is done. You engage the elected officials. You let them deny you or let them just support you, but you must engage. You must get them to take positions, because every position they take, we have a counter for it, right? The truth has a counter for every falsehood. And we're saying the truth of the matter is that we are the current enslaved people, right? We're the enslaved descendants of Africans, right? And so we're present. We got to step up to the plate and identify ourselves in that respect. And this is not to say that anymore, this is not a game of that anybody can't identify themselves any way they like to identify themselves. But for the purpose of this reparation movement, the key thing must be the enslaved group must identify itself by facts and circumstances. We have that. We have the facts and circumstances. Now we just have to put together the discourse to move it forward. So you're talking about divestment is key, and enforcing slavery disclosure laws. Also engaging the two other aspects of the enslavers, that descendant enslavers universities, colleges and universities, and the church. We must engage them. Now the colleges, universities, and the church, they clearly can, if they decide, if they're forced to, because don't look like they want to, they can get the language right in their text. But we have to engage them on that question. Of course, they're going to run, deny, and all those types of things, but we must engage them without any type of direct engagement on the ground. Everything is up in a flux. Everything is just being talked about, and nothing is happening in terms of moving the reparation movement forward right? Because there's no action on the ground. As you can see, all protests pretty much are on the ground. It's the protests on the ground that are effective. So we got to identify what we're protesting about that is solid on truth and facts and our circumstances. We put that together, we win, no matter how long it takes. And it's not over until we say it's over. If we had those true facts pushed forth into the public domain, morally speaking, and in the courts of law, legally speaking. So, you know, there's no real time out about anything. Everything is seamless. So what we're doing now, we're gonna do it after the election, and we're doing it before the election. So and reparations is nonpartisan. Don't get caught up in the Republicans and the Democrats. Don't get into that argument. It's a trap, right? And so the thing is nonpartisan. We're gonna deal with folks who are in office, whoever they are. And so if we're able to identify those things that we have grasp on, locally speaking, locally we can set up slavery disclosure laws. We can also localize HR 40, because then you have a better chance of getting sponsors in Congress, because the state legislators will talk to those to the U.S. Congressperson of that particular state to show them that they must sign the bill. And that's what's happening in Philadelphia, right? The most recent person who's become a co-sponsor is U.S. Congressman Dwight Evans, right? And so, but that's because locally, we also having a state representative to localize H40, to sponsor HR 40 bill right here in the state of Pennsylvania. And say those are the colleagues of each other. They talk to each other. They support each other. And and all we have to do is give them a safe reason based on facts and circumstances of how they can feel comfortable about supporting a state-based, a localizing HR 40 at the state, and then also support HR 40 on the national congressional level. So everything comes up from the bottom. So you organize from your cities, states, and your national level, right? And so that's where it is. That's what it is. Now, of course, this is not the all and be all, or this is the only thing that we should do, but for sure, we had to put some hardcore things on the ground that identify the current descendant of enslavers, and we must engage them. We identify them. That's the church. So we got to be able to put some pressure on the church. We identified colleges and universities, so we're going to have to identify our intro of engagement to them, you see? And we identified the units of government on the city level, on the state level, and on the federal level. So while we're talking about it now, we got to formulate some things. And the things, the formulation deals with slavery disclosure, it deals with divestment, and it deals with getting the language right, identifying that specific, peculiar group of people that were enslaved in the United States, right? I'm 70 years old, 72 probably, really, about 72. And so I was enslaved during Jim Crow. I'm a plaintiff in the next lawsuit that we can find a lawyer or a group of lawyers to put forth this case. We may not win it, but we're going to whittle away at it. So by the time our children are in place of us, they can likewise pick up where we left off. But we must move into this situation with an understanding we're going to win. We got to move into the situation understanding that we're on the right, we had the right truth, the right facts, right? And therefore, and we've identified ourselves as the right people. Okay. And so I know it might seem a little simplified what I'm talking about, but I'm talking about all the successful things. The Japanese identified themselves as a group of people. The Jewish people identified themselves as a group of people. Even the Indians identified themselves as groups of people. It brought them into the nation. So what we have to do, so we cannot just dwell on our descriptions and abscriptions of ourselves. We have to identify ourselves with facts and circumstances of what happened to us. Every lawyer would tell you cannot go into court with just a description of who you are. You got to come in there and tell you what happened to you and who did it to you. You see? And that's what DEADS does, is give us that, identify that people, identify us in such a way that is irrefutable, even current day. We don't have to go back to the 17th century trying to find who our ancestors were who were enslaved. We are enslaved right today. Anybody after 1965, or anybody really, anybody who's currently have a family in the United States that they can identify their ancestors born between 1865 and today. That's the group. I can identify my mother's mother. I can identify my father's father's father, right?
Okay.
I can identify myself.
So
you can identify yourself.
So
others can identify themselves. And so this whole thing called DES is not about what we should call ourselves, but it's how do we position ourselves to engage in this battle, because the first thing gonna throw up at us that you don't even know what group of people you from. And we really can't tell them. We can tell we have our origins in Africa on the continent, but they can also use the same argument. Well, everybody will have origins in Africa, but everybody was enslaved in the United States, right? And we clearly was enslaved here in the United States, as well as others who were enslaved elsewhere. But we got to struggle where our feet are. We got to struggle where we lay our head. We got to struggle where we see the politicians every day, right? We got to struggle where we see spend our money.
Excuse me, brother.
So there's those type of basic things that need to be done. I'm not trying to get through no put forth on the table anything that's not achievable. I want to put things on the table that's already been done, right? And we able to do them again and apply them to our circumstances, we win. But the point is, you got to feel comfortable about what you're doing. I do have
to get on another.
Because again, this is not about what we should call ourselves. This is about what happened to us.
Brother Ari, let me, because Baba Cam has to leave, and so Baba Cam, you have to jump off right now.
I just got a text that they're waiting on me. So
so what I'll allow you to do is just I had 2 questions left. You want to try to answer them before you go, or
if you can ask them both at the same time, I'll try to speak to them both.
I'll ask them both at the same time, and then just before you jump off the line, just tell people how they can find you, how they can get involved with NCOBRA, and where they can go to find out more about the conference coming up in Detroit, I believe. So I'll ask the 2 questions, but then when you wrap up, you can just say those things. So part 1 of the question is this: historically, our ancestors have pursued both a domestic